Trump signs order, preparing for tariffs on Iran's trade partners. Iran won't accept zero enrichment under any circumstances. In economic speeches, Trump claims inflation victory nearly 20 times, even as prices bite. Indian refiners avoid Russian oil in push for U.S. trade deal. U.S. President Donald Trump has signed an executive order threatening new tariffs on countries that continue trading with Iran, even as Washington prepares for another round of nuclear talks with Tehran next week. The order, effective Saturday, creates a framework to impose tariffs potentially around 25% on goods imported from nations that buy products or services from Iran. Secretary of State Marco Rubio will determine the final rate. The move comes amid rising tensions in the Middle East, with a U.S. aircraft carrier group deployed in the region and indirect nuclear talks recently held in Oman. Trump described those discussions as very good and confirmed negotiations will continue. If enforced, the tariffs could impact several major trading partners, including China, Russia, Germany, Turkey, and the United Arab Emirates. China alone accounts for more than a quarter of Iran's trade. U.S.-Iran relations have been strained since the 1979 Islamic Revolution, and direct engagement has remained rare. Meanwhile, Iran is facing internal unrest, with rights groups reporting thousands killed during a government crackdown on economic protests. The tariff threat signals Washington is maintaining economic pressure on Tehran, even while pursuing diplomacy. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi says Tehran is willing to build trust over its nuclear program, but insists uranium enrichment inside Iran remains a firm red line. Speaking after indirect nuclear talks with the United States in Muscat, Araghchi said Iran will decide whether to continue negotiations only after assessing Washington's seriousness. If talks move forward, he stressed, they will focus strictly on nuclear issues. Araghchi repeated that Iran's enrichment activities are for peaceful purposes and rejected any demand for zero enrichment, calling it a scientific achievement and a matter of national pride. He described the latest discussions as a test of trust, noting mixed signals from the U.S. about its commitment. While there was no direct meeting between the delegations, the two sides briefly exchanged a handshake as a diplomatic courtesy. The foreign minister also ruled out negotiations on Iran's missile program or regional policies, saying those topics are not on the agenda. He added that regional countries, along with Russia and China, are supporting efforts to keep diplomacy alive. According to Araghchi, reaching a deal will require fairness, mutual respect, and avoiding excessive demands. The timing and location of the next round of talks will be decided in consultation with Oman. Donald Trump has cast himself as Republicans' chief messenger on the cost of living in an election year, but a Reuters review of his speeches shows a president repeatedly declaring inflation beaten while rarely acknowledging the strain many Americans say they still feel. In 5 speeches on the economy since December, Trump asserted that inflation had been beaten or was way down almost 20 times and said prices were falling almost 30 times, assertions at odds with economic data and voters' daily experiences. Much of the remaining time was spent on grievances and other issues, including immigration, whether Somalia was a country, and attacks on opponents. Taken together, the speeches portray a president struggling to reconcile his central claim that he has fixed the cost of living crisis, with inflation near 3% over the past year, and voters' lived experience of paying more for grocery staples. The price of ground beef, for example, is up 18% since Trump took office a year ago, while ground coffee prices are up 29%. Republican strategists told Reuters that his mixed messaging on the top issue for voters risks creating a credibility gap for him and the Republican Party ahead of the November midterms, when control of Congress will be at stake. Opinion polls show voters are deeply unhappy with Trump's handling of the economy. He can't continue to make claims that are demonstrably false, particularly at the expense of Republicans who are in competitive House districts or Senate races, said Rob Godfrey, a Republican strategist. Trump must be disciplined and focused, he added. One source close to the White House said the president needed to hit the issue of affordability harder and through personal visits to critical districts. He needs to bring the message out because the message is not resonating, the source said, speaking on condition of anonymity to more freely discuss the issue. Kush Desai, a White House spokesman, said Trump's focus on illegal immigration in his speeches is directly connected to his argument that people in the country illegally have an adverse impact on the economy. Desai said it causes, quote, public services being overburdened, business activity disrupted by crime, housing markets flooded, and workers' wages depressed. Trump has repeatedly stressed that much work remains to clean up the economic mess he says his Democratic predecessor Joe Biden left him, Desai added. India is stepping back from purchasing Russian oil, a move that could strengthen its chances of finalizing a major trade agreement with the United States. According to industry sources, several major refiners, including Indian Oil, Bharat Petroleum, and Reliance Industries, are no longer accepting offers for Russian crude scheduled for delivery in March and April. Most other refiners have also paused new purchases, although some shipments for March had already been arranged. The development comes as Washington and New Delhi advance toward a trade pact expected to lower tariffs and expand economic cooperation. President Donald Trump recently removed a 25% tariff on Indian goods, saying India had committed to stopping direct or indirect imports of Russian oil. However, the Indian government has not officially confirmed any such plan. India began buying large volumes of discounted Russian oil after Moscow's 2022 invasion of Ukraine triggered Western sanctions. Since then, the country became Russia's top seaborne crude customer. Now, imports appear to be falling sharply. Sources say India could reduce purchases to between 500,000 and 600,000 barrels per day, down from an average of 1.7 million barrels last year and more than 2 million at its peak in 2025.